Have you ever stood before a structure so immense, so perfectly crafted, that it made you question everything you thought you knew about history? All around our world, scattered across continents and centuries, lie ancient fortresses whose very existence defies logical explanation. These aren't just crumbling ruins or simple stone walls. They are monumental achievements built with such precision and scale that modern engineers, armed with all our technology and knowledge, still can't fully replicate or explain how they were created. They stand as silent, imposing mysteries, challenging our understanding of human capability and whispering secrets of lost technologies and forgotten wisdom. Each fortress is a puzzle waiting to be solved, a story waiting to be uncovered, and today we're setting out on a journey to explore 25 of the most baffling ancient strongholds ever constructed, places where the methods of building remain shrouded in enigma, sparking wonder, debate, and endless fascination. Imagine the sheer ambition it took to conceive these structures. Picture teams of ancient workers hauling stones heavier than elephants, cutting and fitting them together with gaps so thin you can't slide a piece of paper between them. Think of the mathematical precision, the astronomical alignments, the logistical nightmares of moving materials across impossible terrain without the aid of wheels, pulleys, or modern machinery. These fortresses weren't just built for defense. They were statements of power, testaments to human ingenuity, and perhaps even repositories of knowledge we have yet to rediscover. From the Andes Mountains to the deserts of the Middle East, from secluded islands to dense jungles, these constructions share one haunting commonality. They challenge the timeline of human progress and hint at civilizations far more advanced than history books have led us to believe. This video is your invitation to join an archaeological detective story, one where we piece together clues left behind by master builders whose names and techniques have been lost to time. We'll wander through massive stone complexes, decode mysterious symbols, and weigh the theories that attempt to solve these age-old puzzles. You'll come away not just with a list of impressive sights, but with a deeper appreciation for the mysteries that still linger at the edges of human achievement. So settle in, open your mind to the possibilities, and let's embark on an adventure to uncover the secrets of 25 ancient fortresses built with unknown methods. Our journey begins high in the Peruvian Andes, at a place that defies both the landscape and logic. Perched on a steep hillside overlooking the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán is a breathtaking display of architectural audacity. The first thing that strikes you isn't just the size of the stones, but the mind-bending precision with which they were assembled. We're not talking about simple, rough-hewn blocks. These are colossal, multi-sided megaliths, some weighing over 120 tons. That's heavier than a full-grown blue whale. The largest stone in the complex is a staggering 28 feet tall and weighs an estimated 360 tons. And yet, their immense size is almost overshadowed by the incredible craftsmanship. Each stone was individually cut to fit perfectly with its neighbors in a complex, interlocking jigsaw puzzle. The joints are so tight, so flawlessly executed, that you truly cannot slide a single piece of paper, let alone a blade of grass, between them. This wasn't just about creating a formidable barrier. This was stone fitting raised to an art form, achieving a level of seismic stability that has allowed these walls to withstand centuries of devastating earthquakes that have toppled much younger Spanish colonial buildings in the valley below. Which leads us to the first great mystery. How were these stones moved? The quarries where this distinctive green diorite was extracted are located over a dozen miles away, across rugged mountain terrain, deep ravines, and steep inclines. The Inca are not known to have used the wheel for transportation, nor did they have access to strong draft animals like horses or oxen. The prevailing theory suggests that hundreds, perhaps thousands, of laborers used a system of ropes, levers, and log rollers to painstakingly drag these behemoths into place. But when you stand before these walls, that explanation begins to feel almost insufficient. How did they navigate such extreme topography without the stones gaining catastrophic momentum on a downhill slope or becoming utterly immovable on an uphill climb? The logistics of coordinating such an effort, of feeding and housing a workforce large enough to move a 300-ton stone, are staggering to contemplate. Some researchers have proposed the use of advanced sound or vibrational technology to soften the stone, a concept found in local legends, though it remains firmly in the realm of speculation. The simple truth is, we still don't have a definitive answer, and then there is the second, equally puzzling question: how were they cut and shaped? The stone itself is incredibly hard, yet the surfaces are smooth and the angles are perfectly precise. The common suggestion is that they used stone hammers and bronze tools, patiently pecking away at the rock. But to achieve such flawless fits on such a massive scale with those rudimentary tools seems a Herculean, if not impossible, task. Some of the stones feature intricate cuts and bizarre, almost organic shapes with as many as 12 distinct angles, all meeting flush with their neighbors. The precision suggests a sophisticated understanding of geometry and stone masonry that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, our modern capabilities. Was this the product of generations of accumulated trial-and-error knowledge that was then lost to the Spanish conquest? Or does it point to an even older, perhaps unknown, civilization that originally laid the foundations for this incredible site? Sacsayhuamán doesn't just challenge our ideas about Inca technology. It stands as a permanent question mark, a monumental puzzle of stone that continues to guard its secrets fiercely. Leaving the puzzle of Sacsayhuamán behind, we travel across the Pacific to a structure so vast it can be seen from space, a testament to human determination on an almost unimaginable scale. The Great Wall of China stretches for over 13,000 miles, weaving across some of the most treacherous and unforgiving landscapes on Earth. While often thought of as a single continuous barrier, it's actually a network of walls and fortifications built and rebuilt by various dynasties over 2 millennia. Its sheer scale is enough to boggle the mind, but the true mysteries lie not in its length, but in the how did ancient builders move the astronomical quantities of material required, and how have sections of it remained so defiantly intact for over 2,000 years? Consider the logistics for a moment. We're talking about millions upon millions of tons of stone, brick, and tamped earth. Much of the wall snakes along the jagged peaks of mountains where the slopes are steep, the winds are fierce, and the paths are narrow. There were no trucks, no cranes, no heavy machinery. The primary workforce was composed of soldiers, peasants, and even prisoners. The prevailing image is one of human chains, with laborers passing materials hand over hand up the steep mountainsides. For heavier materials, they likely used simple but effective technology like rope networks, wooden sledges, and log rollers. Donkeys and goats were also employed as pack animals on gentler slopes, but the most difficult sections would have demanded sheer human muscle and ingenuity. Some historians suggest the use of clever lifting mechanisms powered by counterweights or human-powered winches, though no definitive archaeological evidence for such complex machines has been found, leaving their methods partially shrouded in guesswork. Yet, the movement of materials is only half the enigma. The other lies in the mortar that binds the stones of the Ming Dynasty sections, a mortar so incredibly durable that it has survived centuries of war, weather, and erosion. Modern scientific analysis has uncovered a fascinating secret ingredient: sticky rice. Yes, the same rice that is a dietary staple was cooked into a porridge and mixed with the standard slaked-lime mortar. This created a composite material that was significantly stronger and more water-resistant than lime mortar alone. The amylopectin in the rice acted as an organic inhibitor, slowing the growth of calcium carbonate crystals and resulting in a denser, more cohesive mortar that has withstood the test of time far better than many modern alternatives. It was an ancient form of nanotechnology, a sophisticated chemical innovation that we are only now fully appreciating. But the rice mortar mystery only deepens the question. Was this ingenious formula a widespread, standardized recipe passed down through engineers, or was it a localized discovery? And for the sections built before the use of sticky rice, what other forgotten formulas might have been used? The wall is not a monolith, it is a patchwork of eras and techniques, each with its own unsolved riddles. The Great Wall stands as a paradox. It is one of the most visible and famous structures on the planet, yet it guards the secrets of its own creation with a silence as imposing as its battlements. It is a monument not just to imperial power, but to the anonymous ingenuity of millions whose lost techniques continue to puzzle engineers and chemists to this day. As we move from the sprawling grandeur of the Great Wall, our next stop takes us to the very heart of ancient myth and legend. Journey with me now to the sun-baked hills of the Peloponnese in Greece, to the Bronze Age citadel of Mycenae. This was the legendary home of King Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces in the Trojan War, and walking among its ruins today, you can still feel the weight of that epic history. But the most awe-inspiring feature isn't a golden mask or a royal tomb amidst the walls. The massive fortifications that encircle the Acropolis are so immense, so seemingly impossible for mere humans to build, that later Greeks, including the historian Pausanias, could only explain them by attributing their construction to the Cyclopes, the mythical one-eyed giants of Homer's epics. This is the origin of the term we still use today, Cyclopean masonry, and when you stand before these walls, the mythological explanation feels almost reasonable. We are not looking at carefully cut blocks like those in Peru. This is something entirely different and in some ways even more intimidating. These are colossal, irregular boulders of limestone, some weighing more than 100 tons, stacked and fitted together in a seemingly chaotic jigsaw puzzle. There is no mortar holding them in place. The entire defensive system relies on the incredible skill of the builders who selected each stone and shaped it to fit perfectly with the ones above, below, and beside it. The gaps between these gigantic rocks were filled with smaller stones and clay, but the primary stability comes from that impeccable, gravity-defying fit. The Lion Gate, the main entrance to the citadel, is a perfect example. The lintel stone above the gate alone is estimated to weigh around 20 tons, and the massive walls that frame it are constructed with a precision that has baffled observers for centuries. This leads us to the central mystery of Mycenae. How did Bronze Age engineers, with technology we consider primitive, achieve such a feat? The quarrying of these boulders was a Herculean task in itself, likely involving heating the limestone with fires and then dousing it with water to cause it to fracture. But the real puzzle is in the fitting. How did they fit each multi-ton, irregularly shaped stone without modern lifting equipment? The most plausible theory suggests the use of immense earthen ramps. Builders would have gradually constructed a ramp of earth and rubble against the rising wall, dragging each new boulder up this slope into its approximate position. From there, teams would have used stone hammers, levers, and wooden wedges to painstakingly nudge, adjust, and shape the stone until it settled into its perfect interlocking position. It was a process of immense patience and incredible physical effort, a testament to a society that could marshal and organize labor on a staggering scale. The proof of their success is in the site's incredible longevity. These walls have stood for over 3,000 years. They have weathered countless earthquakes in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. While later classical Greek and Roman structures have crumbled, the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae remain precisely because of their brilliant construction. The lack of rigid mortar allows the walls to flex and shift slightly during tremors, settling back into place instead of cracking and collapsing. This ancient understanding of seismic activity is as sophisticated as it is mysterious. Were the Mycenaeans simply lucky, or did they possess a deep, empirical knowledge of engineering and geology that has since been lost? the walls stand as a silent, monumental challenge to our assumptions about the capabilities of these early civilizations, a mystery carved in stone that continues to guard the secrets of its legendary builders. From the sun-drenched citadels of Greece, we now descend deep beneath the earth into a hidden world of breathtaking scale and sophistication. In the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, a landscape famous for its fairy chimney rock formations, lies a secret that remained buried for centuries: the Derinkuyu underground city. This isn't a simple cave or a small network of tunnels. It is a veritable subterranean metropolis, an engineering marvel carved entirely by hand into the region's soft volcanic tuff rock. The sheer scope of Derinkuyu is what staggers the imagination. This labyrinth extends an estimated 280 feet deep, with at least 18 discovered levels, though many believe there are more yet to be uncovered. It wasn't a temporary refuge, it was a self-sufficient fortress designed to shelter up to 20,000 people for months at a time, complete with everything needed for long-term survival far from the sunlight. Stepping into this underground world is like entering a perfectly planned ant colony. The architects included living quarters, stables for livestock, churches with vaulted ceilings and carved crosses, communal kitchens, wine and oil press rooms, storage cellars, and even schools. But the true genius of Derinkuyu is revealed in its critical life support systems. 52 ventilation shafts, some stretching over 180 feet to the surface, provided a constant supply of fresh air to even the deepest levels, a feat of precise engineering that prevented carbon dioxide buildup and allowed for fires to be lit for cooking and warmth. Dozens of intricate wells tapped into a subterranean water table, ensuring a steady, uncontaminated supply of drinking water that was independent of sources on the surface that could be poisoned or blocked by an enemy. The entire complex was designed for ultimate defense. Narrow, low-ceilinged corridors forced invaders to enter single file, and these passages could be sealed off at a moment's notice by massive, circular rolling stone doors. These doors, weighing nearly 1,000 pounds each, functioned like giant millstones, slotting into place from grooves in the walls to completely block access. They could only be operated from the inside, making the city virtually impenetrable once secured. This brings us to the profound and puzzling question at the heart of Derinkuyu: how was this monumental task achieved? The excavation alone represents a mind-boggling amount of labor. It is estimated that over 1 million cubic feet of spoil, the rock and debris dug out, had to be carefully removed. But where did it all go? There are no massive piles of rubble on the surface today to indicate such a gigantic project. The most plausible theory is that the excavated material was strategically and silently dispersed across the surrounding valleys over generations, a logistical nightmare of hidden labor. The carving itself had to be executed with incredible precision to avoid collapses. The builders demonstrated an advanced understanding of structural integrity, leaving key support pillars and designing rooms with arched ceilings to distribute weight, all accomplished with simple hand tools like chisels, picks, and shovels. Perhaps the most baffling aspect of the construction is the question of lighting. How did the original builders work in the absolute, total darkness of the deep levels? Torches and oil lamps would have consumed precious oxygen and filled the confined spaces with smoke, completely negating the benefit of the sophisticated ventilation shafts. Some have suggested they might have used polished metal mirrors to reflect sunlight deep into the shaft, but this would have provided only a faint, limited illumination for the most superficial layers. The construction of the deepest levels, far beyond any possible reach of reflected light, remains a complete enigma. Was there a lost, simple technology for safe, long-lasting illumination that we are unaware of? The Hittites are often credited with starting the excavation over 3,000 years ago, later expanded by early Christians, but the methods they used to create this dark world fortress remain one of history's most impressive and mysterious architectural accomplishments. Leaving the shadowy depths of Derinkuyu behind, we now ascend to one of the most visually spectacular and audacious constructions in the ancient world. Rising from the central plains of Sri Lanka, a massive rock column erupts from the earth, towering 660 feet above the surrounding jungle. This is Sigiriya, the legendary Lion's Rock, and perched upon its seemingly inaccessible summit are the ruins of a palace so extraordinary. Its very existence feels like a defiance of gravity and logic. Built in the 5th century by King Kashyapa, this fortress palace is a masterpiece of urban planning, hydraulic engineering, and artistic expression, all achieved on a vertigo-inducing plateau that measures less than 3 acres. To even contemplate building here required a vision bordering on madness, and to succeed required skills that continue to mystify historians and engineers today. The first and most obvious challenge was the ascent itself. How did builders, artisans, and laborers transport all the necessary materials, bricks, mortar, marble, and the provisions for a sustained workforce up a near vertical rock face? The answer lies in a breathtaking feat of temporary engineering that left almost no trace. Archaeologists believe the builders constructed a massive, zig-zagging scaffolding system that clung to the western face of the rock. This wasn't mere bamboo poles, it was a robust latticework anchored directly into the cliffside through a series of holes drilled into the rock. These holes, which can still be seen today, supported a network of timber platforms and walkways that effectively created a temporary road straight up to the summit. The logistical coordination would have been immense, with teams of workers hauling materials up this precarious path in a continuous human chain. For the largest blocks of marble, which were used for the royal throne and other prestige features, it's theorized they may have used a complex system of counterweighted pulleys or windlasses, though no physical evidence of such machinery remains. The entire effort was a monumental gamble, a testament to the absolute power of a king and the incredible capability of his engineers to conquer the vertical world. Upon reaching the summit, the builders faced a second, equally complex challenge: water. A fortress palace must be self-sufficient, and a king requires luxury. But how do you provide a constant, pressurized water supply to the top of a 600-foot rock, especially during the dry season? The solution was a hydraulic system of breathtaking sophistication, arguably the most advanced of its time. A series of underground channels were carved directly into the living rock of the summit to capture and store every drop of rainwater. But the true genius is revealed in the gardens below. At the base of the rock, builders created a sprawling, symmetrical complex of water gardens, moats, and pools. This system was powered by hydraulic pressure, using a network of underground terracotta pipes and precise gravity-fed gradients. Water was pumped from the gardens at the base all the way to the summit using a system of suction pumps, likely powered by manual or animal-driven force. Once at the top, it was stored in massive rock-cut reservoirs and then distributed through a gravity-fed network to provide running water to royal bathing pools, fountains, and even an ingenious cooling system that channeled water through the palace walls. Some of these fountains, designed over 1,500 years ago, are still functional today during the rainy season, a silent tribute to the anonymous hydraulic geniuses who created them. Perhaps the most captivating mystery of Sigiriya is found on its sheltered western gallery. Here, the builders rendered a smooth, gleaming wall of polished plaster that runs for over 140 feet. This is the famous mirror wall. In its prime, it was said to be polished so meticulously that the king could see his reflection in it as he walked by. The plaster was made from a unique, proprietary mix of lime mortar, egg whites, wild honey, and the nectar of a specific local flower, creating a surface with the durability of ceramic and the sheen of glass. The real astonishment is that portions of this mirror-like finish have survived centuries of tropical sun and monsoon rains, retaining a remarkable polish to this day. The chemical composition of this ancient plaster is a lost recipe, a formula that achieved a longevity modern materials struggle to match in the same harsh environment. This wall also serves as one of the world's oldest and most fascinating guest books. For centuries after the palace was abandoned, visitors inscribed over 1,000 pieces of prose and poetry onto its glossy surface, their words preserved by the very durability of the mysterious plaster they were praising. Sigiriya is more than a fortress, it is a symphony in stone, water, and light, a place where ancient ambition reached for the sky and left behind a puzzle of artistry and engineering that has yet to be fully solved. From the lush, water-rich heights of Sigiriya, we now journey to a place defined by its stark, brutal opposite, the searing, waterless desert. Rising 430 feet above the stark, sun-bleached shores of the Dead Sea in Israel, the Mesa of Masada is a natural fortress of breathtaking isolation. It was here, in the 1st century before the Common Era, that King Herod the Great, a ruler plagued by paranoia and external threats, chose to build what might be his most incredible achievement. The plateau's natural defenses are formidable sheer cliffs on every side, accessible only by 3 narrow, treacherous paths. But Herod didn't just occupy this rock. He transformed it into a luxurious, self-sufficient royal retreat, complete with sprawling palaces, storerooms, and even a Roman-style bath complex. The existence of such opulence in one of the most arid and inhospitable environments on Earth presents a logistical puzzle that is as awe-inspiring as it is perplexing. The most critical challenge, and the one that defines Masada's genius, was the single resource utterly absent from the summit: water. Without a reliable and massive supply, no fortress, no matter how defensible, could survive a siege, and no king would endure the harsh conditions for long. Herod's engineers solved this problem with a system of water collection and storage so vast it borders on the unbelievable. They constructed a network of massive cisterns, not on the plateau, but carved directly into the northern and western cliff faces of the mountain itself. These weren't small pools, they were enormous cavernous chambers hewn from solid rock. In total, these cisterns had a combined capacity of nearly 1.5 million cubic feet of water. To put that in perspective, that's enough to fill over 15 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But how did they fill them? The rainfall in the Judean desert is scarce and unpredictable. The solution was an act of hydrological brilliance. The engineers designed an elaborate catchment system across the vast, barren landscape to the west of Masada. They constructed a series of dams and channels that diverted the entire watershed of the surrounding mountains. During the brief, violent flash floods that occur after a rare desert rain, these channels would capture the torrential runoff and funnel it, using nothing but gravity, through a contoured aqueduct that led to a single point, the top of Masada. From there, the water was channeled into the cliffside cisterns. The coordination and topographic understanding required to plan this over such a vast distance without modern surveying tools is staggering. Teams of laborers would then have the back-breaking task of hauling the water up from the cisterns to the summit using buckets and ropes, a continuous effort to supply the palace's needs. This system was so effective that it could have sustained a community of nearly 1,000 people for many months, turning a waterless rock into a desert oasis. Supplying water was only half the battle. The other monumental task was the construction itself. How did Herod's builders transport the sheer volume of materials required to build not one, but 2 lavish palaces, massive storehouses, a defensive wall, and a bathhouse? The Roman-style bath complex alone required specialized materials like clay pipes for hypocaust heating systems, vast quantities of mosaic tiles, and tons of imported marble and stucco for decoration. The standard materials, limestone blocks, timber, and mud bricks, would have numbered in the millions. The most plausible theory points to the serpentine path on the western side, known as the Snake Path, which, while steep, was the most scalable route. It is believed that materials were hauled up this path by a continuous human chain of workers and donkeys. For the larger, more delicate items like marble columns or slabs for the bathhouse's caldarium, they may have constructed a giant ramp, similar to those used by the Egyptians for pyramid construction, though no archaeological evidence of such a ramp remains at Masada. The construction of the northern palace, which hangs precariously over the northern cliff face on 3 terraces, adds another layer of mystery. Building on the summit was difficult enough, but constructing a complex that was partly suspended over a 400-foot drop required unparalleled engineering courage and skill. The foundation work involved building massive retaining walls and support vaults directly onto the natural rock, essentially creating an artificial extension of the mountain itself. The precision of the stone cutting here is exceptional, with blocks fitting together tightly without mortar, a technique that provided the flexibility needed to withstand earthquakes. The logistical nightmare of building this hanging palace, of workers maneuvering on scaffolding over a sheer drop, with all materials needing to be lowered carefully into place, is almost unimaginable. It stands as a terrifying testament to Herod's ruthless ambition and the anonymous skill of the engineers and laborers who turned his paranoid vision into a stone and mortar reality, a desert marvel that continues to challenge our understanding of ancient construction capabilities. From the sun-scorched cliffs of Masada, we now voyage north to a land of misty glens and windswept coasts, where ancient builders left behind a different kind of architectural puzzle. Scattered across the Scottish Highlands and Islands, particularly in Orkney and Shetland, stand the mysterious and formidable brocks. These are not fortresses in the traditional sense of high walls enclosing a large area, but rather uniquely Scottish Iron Age structures that served as defensive homesteads, towering stone symbols of power and prestige. Imagine a landscape 2,000 years ago dotted with these massive conical towers, some rising as high as 40 feet, the equivalent of a 4-story modern building. They are among the most sophisticated examples of drystone construction ever achieved, and their enduring presence in one of Europe's most unforgiving climates is a testament to a lost engineering genius. The defining feature of a broch and the heart of its mystery is its revolutionary double-walled construction. Instead of building a single, thick wall, the architects designed 2 concentric stone walls, skillfully binding them together with long, flat stone slabs. This created a hollow, vertical cavity within the wall itself, running the entire height of the structure. This was far more than a clever architectural trick. It was a stroke of multi-functional brilliance. Firstly, this hollow wall acted as a highly effective insulating barrier. The trapped air within the cavity created a buffer against the relentless Scottish wind and driving rain, helping to maintain a stable, warmer temperature inside the living quarters. Secondly, it made the structure remarkably lightweight and stable compared to a solid wall of the same height and footprint, significantly reducing the overall weight and pressure on the foundation. This was a critical innovation for building tall on often uneven or soft ground. But how did they achieve such staggering stability without a single drop of mortar to hold the stones together? The entire structure relies on the principle of gravity and precise stone placement. The walls were built with a deliberate inward taper, meaning they are narrower at the top than at the base. This design creates a center of gravity that pulls inward, making the entire tower incredibly stable and self-supporting. Each individual stone was carefully selected and shaped to fit snugly with its neighbors, transferring loads evenly throughout the structure. The friction between the stones, combined with the interlocking quality of the construction, creates a strength that is both flexible and immense. This flexibility is their secret to longevity. In high winds or even during ground tremors, a broch can shift and settle minutely without cracking or collapsing, unlike a rigid, mortared wall that would simply break apart. The passageways and small cells built into the thickness of the wall also serve to break up stresses within the stonework, acting as built-in stabilizers. It is a perfect marriage of form and function, where every stone plays a calculated role in the integrity of the whole. the construction process itself is a puzzle we can only partially solve. Erecting a broch required an entire community's effort and a deep, inherited knowledge of stonework. The stones were likely gathered from local fields or quarried from nearby outcrops using stone hammers and fire-setting techniques. The building itself would have required simple but effective scaffolding made of timber and rope, perhaps anchored into the wall itself as it rose. The most plausible theory suggests that the tower was built from both the inside and outside simultaneously. Teams of workers would have passed stones up a spiraling ramp of earth and rubble built against the rising outer wall, while others worked from the inside, carefully placing the inner wall and the binding stones that tied the two shells together. Once the structure was complete, this earthen ramp would be dismantled and the stonework would stand revealed. The proof of their success is in the sheer number that still stand today, like the famous broch of Mycenae in Shetland, which remains almost at its original height, a silent, imposing sentinel that has weathered 2 millennia of Atlantic storms. These structures are a powerful reminder that the so-called barbarians of the North possessed a sophisticated and profound understanding of engineering and their environment, creating timeless monuments that continue to defy the elements and challenge our perceptions of the past. Moving east from the brochs of Scotland, we arrive at a structure that represents the absolute pinnacle of feudal Japanese military architecture, a place where beauty and defensive brutality exist in perfect, breathtaking harmony. In the city of Himeji, rising like a magnificent white heron taking flight, stands Himeji Castle, a complex wooden fortress that has defied earthquakes, wars, and over 400 years of relentless weathering. Unlike the stone giants we've explored, Himeji's primary building material is wood, yet its survival is arguably even more miraculous. This is not a single building but a sprawling, labyrinthine complex of 83 structures centered around a towering 7-story main keep. Its brilliant white plaster walls and elegantly curved roofs have earned it the poetic name Hakujo, or White Heron Castle, but this graceful appearance conceals a heart of pure, calculated martial ingenuity designed to confound, trap, and destroy any invading force. The first line of defense was psychological and physical disorientation. Approaching armies would be funneled through a deliberately chaotic maze of paths and courtyards within the outer baileys. These paths are filled with more than 1,000 confusing twists, turns, and dead ends. This labyrinthine design, known as Gyoruwa, served a critical purpose. It broke up the cohesion of a large attacking force, preventing them from advancing in organized ranks. Narrow passages would force soldiers into single file, making them vulnerable to attack from above, while the constant disorientation sapped their morale and energy. The walls lining these paths are peppered with 3 different types of openings, each for a specific weapon. Long, narrow horizontal slits called yasama were for archers to fire arrows. Larger square or circular openings, tepazama, were for soldiers firing matchlock muskets introduced by the Portuguese. The smallest, triangular openings were designed for dropping stones or pouring boiling water or oil onto attackers below. Every step forward for an enemy was a step deeper into a lethal killing zone. But the true genius of Himeji's defense lies in its hidden architecture, the secrets you cannot see from the outside. The main keep, which appears to have 5 stories from the exterior, actually contains 7 levels with 2 concealed floors hidden between the others. These secret floors were not just for storage, they were a strategic reserve, allowing defenders to move reinforcements and supplies between levels unseen by the enemy outside, and providing a final, unexpected stronghold if the upper floors were breached. The castle is also a honeycomb of hidden rooms and passageways within its walls, allowing the lord and his retainers to move covertly or escape if necessary. The construction techniques themselves are a marvel of pre-industrial engineering. The entire massive structure was built using complex wood joinery, with not a single metal nail used in the primary frame. Master craftsmen employed an array of intricate interlocking joints, such as the nuki and watariego, which locked the enormous timber beams and columns together with the strength of a modern steel frame. This wooden skeleton was designed to be flexible, allowing it to sway and absorb the immense energy of earthquakes like a tree bending in the wind, rather than shattering like a rigid stone building would. This leads us to the profound and enduring mystery of Heimji. How has this complex wooden structure, so vulnerable to fire and decay, survived for centuries in a country known for its seismic violence? The answer is a combination of brilliant design, meticulous maintenance, and a generous measure of luck. The flexibility of the joinery is its primary defense against tremors. The entire frame moves as a unified, flexible entity with joints that shift and settle without breaking. The massive central pillar, a single, giant tree trunk that forms the spine of the main keep, acts as a shock absorber, dissipating energy throughout the structure. Furthermore, the brilliant white plaster coating the walls, made from a mixture of lime, crushed shells, and seaweed, is not merely for show. It is a highly effective fire retardant, protecting the vulnerable wooden lattice beneath from fire arrows and incendiary attacks. The castle's survival through the great earthquakes of the 17th and 18th centuries is a direct testament to the empirical seismic engineering knowledge of its builders, knowledge that was passed down through generations of master carpenters but never formally written down. The construction process itself boggles the mind. Erecting the main keep required the harvesting, transporting, and shaping of colossal ancient trees, some with diameters exceeding 3 feet. These were hauled from distant mountains without the use of wheels, likely dragged on sledges over lubricated log roads by massive teams of laborers. The precise cutting and fitting of the joints had to be perfect on the first attempt. There was no room for error when dealing with beams weighing several tons. The master carpenter would have used a system of detailed full-scale plans drawn on boards, but the actual fitting was a feat of three-dimensional visualization and unparalleled craftsmanship. How they managed to hoist these enormous beams into place and assemble this intricate wooden puzzle high into the air remains a subject of awe and speculation. They likely used a complex system of tripods, pulleys, and sheer human power, constructing earthen ramps around the growing frame to raise the materials. Heimji Castle stands not as a relic of a bygone era, but as a living textbook of lost artisan skills, a monument to a time when wood was not just a building material, but a medium for achieving structural perfection that continues to protect this magnificent fortress from the ravages of time. Yet for all its legendary might, the true marvel of Babylon lies not in the scale of its walls, but in the breathtaking artistry that adorned them, a technological and artistic achievement that remains vibrant to this day. The grand entrance to the city's inner sanctum was the Ishtar Gate, a structure so magnificent that its reconstruction in Berlin's Pergamon Museum still leaves visitors speechless. The gate itself was a monumental double gatehouse, part of a larger processional way used in religious festivals. But what sets it apart from every other ancient monument is its stunning, almost surreal coloration. The entire facade is covered in a brilliant, lapis lazuli blue glazed brick, a color so deep and vibrant it seems to capture the very essence of the Mesopotamian sky. Embedded into this dazzling blue background are hundreds of life-sized reliefs of divine animals alternating rows of ferocious bulls, associated with the storm god Adad, and mighty dragons, mythical creatures with the head of a snake, the body of a dragon, and the hind legs of an eagle, sacred to the city's patron deity Marduk. The mystery of this gateway is not just its beauty, but its incredible durability. While the mud-brick cores of Babylon's walls have largely melted back into the earth, the glazed bricks of the Ishtar Gate have retained their spectacular color for over 2,500 years, resisting fading, chipping, and the harsh elements of the Iraqi desert. This was no accident. It was the product of a highly sophisticated and now lost chemical and kiln-based technology, Creating these glazed bricks was an alchemical process of breathtaking complexity. Artisans began by meticulously shaping and firing the bricks themselves. Then they applied a glaze slip, a liquid mixture primarily composed of silica, essentially sand, which forms glass when melted. But the brilliant blue color came from the addition of a copper-based mineral, likely malachite or azurite. The real genius, however, was in the fluxing agent. To lower the extremely high melting point of silica, they added a flux, probably a form of sodium carbonate or potassium carbonate, which allowed the glaze to vitrify and bond to the brick at a lower, more manageable temperature. The firing process was the greatest challenge and the most closely guarded secret. Each glazed brick had to be fired a second time at a precise, controlled temperature, likely in an updraft kiln. If the temperature was too low, the glaze would not melt and fuse to the brick, resulting in a powdery, dull finish that would quickly erode. If the temperature was even slightly too high, the glaze would run, the colors would burn out, and the intricate animal reliefs would melt into a distorted mess. Achieving a consistent temperature across a kiln large enough to fire thousands of these large bricks required an empirical understanding of thermodynamics that seems to defy the era. The result was a chemical marriage between brick and glaze, creating a ceramic surface as hard and durable as porcelain. This ancient plastic was waterproof, sunproof, and virtually impervious to erosion, a technological masterpiece that has preserved the glory of Babylon long after its empire faded into history. The precise recipe and firing technique remain a secret that modern materials scientists have never been able to fully replicate, a testament to the anonymous master chemists of Babylon whose genius continues to shine with undimmed brilliance. Leaving the vibrant, glazed brilliance of Babylon behind, we now travel to the heart of medieval Spain, to a fortress that seems to have been not just built upon the landscape, but dreamed into existence by it. Jutting from a steep, narrow rock promontory at the confluence of two rivers, the Alcazar of Segovia presents a silhouette so unique and so dramatic it has captivated imaginations for nearly a millennium. Its elongated, pointed bow and towering masts of turrets create an unforgettable image, a stone ship forever sailing through the Castilian plains. This illusion is no accident. It is the direct result of a foundational engineering decision so audacious it continues to inspire awe. The entire palace fortress is constructed on the pre-existing jagged limestone ridge, its shape dictated by the very bones of the earth. Medieval engineers didn't merely choose this site, they embraced its inherent challenges and impossibilities, using the natural rock as both the foundation and the blueprint for their visionary design. Constructing such a massive, complex structure on this narrow, irregular spine of rock was a feat of medieval engineering that pushed the boundaries of known technique. The first and most critical task was to create a stable, level foundation on the uneven, sloping bedrock. This was achieved not by flattening the rock, but by building up from it with a system of immense stone vaults and arches. These subterranean support structures, hidden beneath the grand halls and chambers, are a masterpiece of load-bearing ingenuity. They effectively created a flat, artificial plateau upon which the upper walls could be built, while simultaneously distributing the enormous weight of the superstructure evenly across the entire length of the rocky promontory. This network of vaults also served a dual purpose, forming the cavernous cisterns that were essential for the castle's water supply during a siege. The stonework itself is a marvel of precision. The ashlar blocks cut from the local limestone were fitted together with such exactitude that the walls appear as seamless, monolithic sheets of rock. The masons employed a technique known as talado a seco, or dry dressing, where each block was painstakingly shaped with chisels and hammers to fit perfectly against its neighbor without the initial need for excessive mortar. The resulting walls are not only immensely strong, but also possess a clean, sharp aesthetic that enhances the castle's iconic, ship-like profile. While the exterior is a formidable display of martial strength, the interior reveals a world of breathtaking artistry and hidden complexity, much of it influenced by the sophisticated craftsmanship of the Moorish artisans who remained in Spain after the Christian Reconquista. The most stunning rooms, such as the Hall of Kings, are adorned with exquisite mudéjar art, a style developed by Muslim craftsmen working under Christian rule. The ceilings here are not simple wood or plaster, they are staggering works of geometric genius. Artisans carved and assembled countless tiny, interlocking pieces of wood, larch, pine, and walnut without using a single nail, creating intricate, honeycombed coffered ceilings that seem to defy gravity. The patterns are based on complex mathematical principles of repetition and symmetry, concepts rooted in Islamic design that were far ahead of common European architectural knowledge at the time. The creation of these artisanado ceilings required a deep, almost mystical understanding of geometry and wood joinery, a knowledge that was often passed down within families of craftsmen as a closely guarded secret. The methods for designing and assembling these vast, self-supporting wooden puzzles remain partially obscure, a testament to a lost artisan tradition where art and structural engineering were one and the same. Beyond the gorgeous public chambers lies another layer of mystery, a hidden world of secret passageways and clandestine corridors woven through the castle's thick walls. These were not mere service tunnels, but sophisticated escape routes and spy passages designed for the royal court's security and survival. One such secret stairway, known as the galley, is a narrow, concealed corridor that runs the entire length of the building, allowing for the unseen movement of guards or the discreet escape of nobility during an attack. The construction of these features was an exercise in architectural deception. Builders had to design these passages into the initial plans, carving them out of the solid masonry as the walls rose, often leaving false panels and hidden pivoting stones that blended perfectly with the interior decor. The precision required to hide an entire staircase within a seemingly ordinary wall, ensuring its entrance remained undetectable for centuries, speaks to a level of strategic planning and clandestine construction that goes far beyond simple castle building. It transforms the Alcazar from a mere fortress into a living, breathing entity full of secrets, a place where the very stones were complicit in the intrigues and dramas of the Spanish crown, safeguarding their mysteries long after their original purpose was forgotten. Yet the most profound enigma of Kumbhalgarh lies not in its grand scale, but in the perplexing technical details of its construction, details that leave modern engineers scratching their heads. How did the builders achieve such a perfect, seamless bond between the stone blocks without the use of any visible mortar? The walls appear as if they grew organically from the mountain itself. The primary theory suggests the use of a unique lime-based mortar, but its specific composition, the exact mixture of lime, local herbs, and other organic binders, remains a closely guarded secret lost to time. This mysterious formula created a bond so strong and durable that it has withstood over 5 centuries of monsoon rains, blistering heat, and seismic activity without significant erosion. The precision of the stone cutting is another marvel. Each irregularly shaped block was individually quarried and painstakingly shaped to fit perfectly with its neighbors, creating an interlocking puzzle that distributes weight and stress with incredible efficiency. The logistical nightmare of sourcing, shaping, and transporting millions of these stones up and down steep, rugged slopes without modern machinery or even a readily available water source near the summit for mixing mortar is a puzzle we have yet to fully solve. It speaks to a level of project management, mathematical planning, and artisan skill that rivals any ancient construction project in the world, a silent testament to the Rajput spirit that refused to be conquered. Now our journey takes us to a place where history isn't just written in stone, but carved into the very soul of human civilization itself. In the ancient heart of Syria, rising from the center of one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, stands the citadel of Aleppo. This isn't merely a castle, it is a geological and architectural marvel, a fortress built upon a colossal, natural limestone outcrop that has been a sacred site for over 5,000 years. The hill itself is a formidable natural defense, but what human hands achieved upon it elevates it to one of the most imposing and enigmatic strongholds ever constructed. For millennia, it stood as an unconquerable sentinel, its sheer presence a statement of power that dominated the surrounding plains and defied some of history's greatest armies, from Alexander the Great to the Mongols and Crusaders. The first and most obvious question is how ancient builders even began such a project on such a scale. The citadel's man-made slopes are a breathtaking feat of defensive engineering in their own right. The entire base of the natural hill was encased in a smooth, steep stone glacis, a slick, sloping wall of massive limestone blocks that soars over 60 feet high at some points. This glacis was designed with one devastatingly effective purpose: to make the walls completely and utterly unscalable. There are no handholds, no cracks, no seams for a grappling hook to catch. An attacking army would be funneled towards the single, heavily fortified entrance gate, forced to navigate a narrow, twisting ramp that is exposed to defensive fire from every angle. The construction of this colossal stone skirt required quarrying, shaping, and transporting thousands of massive limestone blocks, then fitting them together with a seamless precision that has survived countless earthquakes. The logistical effort to create this initial barrier is a monumental mystery, a project that would have required a workforce of thousands and an architectural vision that could see centuries into the future. Yet, the true secrets of Aleppo's endurance are not found in the towering walls above, but deep within the bedrock below. The citadel is a hollow mountain, riddled with a sophisticated network of underground tunnels, chambers, and aqueducts that turned it into a self-sufficient subterranean city. These are not simple escape routes. They are a complex, multi-level circulatory system designed for survival. The most critical of these were the water channels. In a region where siege often meant cutting off water supplies, the citadel's engineers designed a system to make it independent of the outside world. They excavated deep, vaulted cisterns into the limestone, some large enough to hold millions of gallons of water, but the genius was in how they filled them. A network of gently sloping underground aqueducts known as kanats stretched far out into the surrounding city and countryside, silently and secretly channeling groundwater from distant sources directly into the heart of the citadel's reservoirs. This meant that even if the city below was captured, the fortress above could remain supplied with fresh water for years. The excavation of these tunnels through solid rock, maintaining precise gradients over long distances without modern surveying tools, represents a lost art of hydro-engineering that we are only beginning to fully appreciate. Beyond water, the tunnels served other, more mysterious purposes. Some were designed for the covert movement of troops, allowing defenders to suddenly appear behind enemy lines or to reinforce threatened sections of the wall without being seen. Others were believed to connect to a wider network beneath the ancient city, creating a hidden web of communication and escape. The construction methods for these deep tunnels remain largely speculative. How did they ventilate them during excavation? How did they light the endless darkness to achieve such precise, straight bores through the rock? The most plausible theories suggest they used a series of vertical shafts dug from the surface at intervals to provide both air and light, but the coordination required for such a project over vast distances is staggering to contemplate. These tunnels transformed the citadel from a static fortress into a dynamic, living entity, capable of outlasting any siege not through brute strength alone, but through unparalleled foresight and a deep, almost supernatural understanding of the earth upon which it was built. This incredible longevity, standing firm through dozens of major sieges across 4,000 years, is the citadel's greatest mystery. Its resilience is a testament to a cumulative, layered genius. Each conquering civilization, the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Ayyubids, did not just occupy the citadel. they added to it, reinforcing and improving upon the work of their predecessors. They learned from the structure's failures and enhanced its strengths, creating a palimpsest of defensive innovation. The walls were periodically strengthened and heightened. The gatehouse was made ever more complex and lethal. The underground networks were expanded and refined. This was not the work of a single architect, but the accumulated wisdom of centuries, a dialogue in stone and mortar between generations of master builders. They understood the local limestone, how to cut it, how to shape it, and how to make it stand for eternity. They designed the entire structure to be a single, cohesive unit with the natural rock, allowing it to flex and sway during the region's frequent earthquakes rather than shatter. The citadel of Aleppo is more than a fortress. It is a library of ancient military engineering, each stone a page in a manual of survival written across millennia, a timeless lesson in how to build not just for a battle but for the ages. Perched on a stark, arid hilltop overlooking the Dead Sea in modern-day Jordan, the fortress of Machaerus stands as a haunting monument to the ambition and paranoia of King Herod the Great. This was not a palace for lavish court entertainment. It was a remote, intimidating stronghold, a place of exile and imprisonment, most famously for the prophet John the Baptist. Its location was chosen not for convenience, but for absolute control and inaccessibility, rising nearly 700 meters above the Dead Sea on a razor-backed ridge. The very decision to build here seems almost irrational, a deliberate challenge to the limits of ancient engineering. Constructing a fortified royal complex on such an isolated and precipitous site presented a trilogy of nightmares, moving the materials, sourcing water, and simply keeping workers from plummeting to their deaths during construction. The methods they employed to overcome these obstacles remain a source of deep fascination and mystery for archaeologists. The first and most immediate challenge was the sheer verticality of the site. Every single stone, every piece of timber, every ounce of mortar and decorative tile had to be hauled up a near vertical pathway from the base of the mountain. There was no gently sloping ramp as at other Herodian sites. The approach was a narrow, winding, and exposed track. The primary theory suggests an immense and continuous human chain, a relay of laborers passing materials hand over hand in a desperate, slow-motion bucket brigade up the mountainside. For the larger, more critical architectural elements, the massive ashlar blocks for the foundation and the enormous column drums for the peristyle courtyard, this method seems almost impossibly dangerous. It's plausible that for these heaviest items, engineers devised a sophisticated rope and pulley system, perhaps powered by a large human-powered treadmill winch known as a capstan anchored at the summit. This would have required a team of workers walking in a circle inside a large wooden wheel to slowly, painstakingly hoist multi-ton stones straight up the cliff face. The engineering courage to operate such a device on the edge of a 700-meter drop is staggering to contemplate. Once the materials were on the summit, the builders faced their second, even greater challenge: water. A fortress cannot hold out against a siege without it, and the hilltop of Machaerus is utterly barren. Herod's solution was one of hydrological brilliance. They constructed a vast, intricate network of cisterns, but unlike at Masada, these were not carved into cliff faces. At Machaerus, they were built underneath the fortress itself. The entire complex is supported by a subterranean world of water storage. The main cistern is a colossal, vaulted chamber hewn from the bedrock, capable of holding hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. But the real genius was in the catchment system. The entire fortress was designed as a giant funnel. The courtyards, the pathways, and the roofs of the buildings were all slightly angled and channeled so that every single drop of precious rainwater that fell on the summit would be guided through a hidden network of clay pipes and channels into this central underground reservoir. During the brief, violent winter rains, the fortress itself became a tool for its own survival, capturing the runoff that would otherwise be lost down the mountainside. This system was so effective it could have sustained a garrison for many months, turning a waterless rock into a self-sufficient island in the sky. The summit itself was then transformed into a startling contrast of brutal military function and opulent royal comfort. The defensive walls, constructed from the local limestone, were thick and high, punctuated by sturdy towers that provided commanding views of any approach. Yet within these stern battlements, Herod had his architects build a lavish palace complete with a Roman bathhouse, a peristyle courtyard with elegant columns, and royal apartments with stunning mosaic floors. The presence of a bathhouse with its hypocaust heating system requiring a constant supply of water and fuel is particularly baffling given the remote location. Importing the specialized materials for this luxury, the clay pipes for the hypocaust, the tesserae for the mosaics, the fine stucco for the walls would have doubled the already Herculean logistical effort. It speaks to Herod's absolute demand for Roman-style luxury, even in the most remote and unforgiving outposts of his kingdom. This was a statement of power, a declaration that even here, on the edge of civilization, the king's authority and refinement were absolute. The true, lingering mystery of Machaerus is not just the how, but the why of such extreme effort. Its strategic value was limited. It guarded a minor trade route and offered a sightline over a largely empty desert. Its purpose seems to have been more psychological than tactical, a symbol of Herodian control and a virtually inescapable prison for political and religious enemies like John the Baptist. The construction methods pushed the boundaries of what we believe was possible with first-century technology. The precise techniques for creating the vast, waterproof underground cisterns, the method for hoisting the largest column drums, and the sheer organizational will to sustain a workforce in such a hostile environment for years on end are details lost to history. Walking through its ruins today, one is left with a profound sense of awe not just at the cruelty it witnessed, but at the anonymous human effort and ingenuity required to force such a magnificent, terrible place into existence against the immutable will of nature itself. From the desolate cliffs of Machaerus, we journey now to the Deccan Plateau of India, to a fortress that perfected a different kind of power, the power of sound. The fortress of Golconda is a sprawling citadel that once served as the capital of the Qutb dynasty and the legendary source of some of the world's most famous diamonds, including the Hope and the Koh-i-Noor. But beyond the tales of fabulous wealth, Golconda is an architectural marvel, a fortress whose builders mastered the science of acoustics and geometry in ways that seem to defy the era of its construction. Its most famous feature isn't a wall or a tower, but an invisible, carefully engineered web of sound that turned the entire complex into a giant early warning system, a technological secret that remains perfectly functional over 400 years later. Approaching the main entrance, the massive Fateh Darwaza gate, you are met with a deceptively simple test. If you stand in a specific spot just inside the gate, clap your hands firmly, the sound doesn't just echo, it transforms. It travels clear and distinct all the way up to the highest point of the fort, the Bala Hissar Pavilion, which sits nearly a kilometer away and 300 feet higher in elevation. This is not a parlor trick, it was a sophisticated and deliberate security feature. A designated guard stationed at the highest point could instantly identify the specific sound of a handclap at the main gate, distinguishing it from the general noise of the bustling citadel below. This acoustic signal would alert the entire fort to the arrival of important dignitaries or, more critically, to a potential threat trying to breach the main entrance. The precision of this effect is what baffles engineers. Sound naturally dissipates over distance, especially in an open, windy environment. For a clap to remain intelligible over such a long range required a masterful manipulation of the entire acoustic environment. The genius behind this sonic phenomenon lies in a series of deliberate architectural choices that most visitors never notice. The entire pathway from the gate to the summit is lined with a series of large, arched stone portals and vaulted corridors. Each of these structures acts as a perfect sound reflector, catching the acoustic wave and bouncing it forward to the next reflector with minimal loss of energy. The angles of the walls, the curvature of the ceilings, and the specific materials used were all calculated to create a resonant pathway. The builders likely used a hard, high-density limestone that reflects sound waves efficiently rather than absorbing them. Furthermore, the path itself is not a straight line but a series of gentle curves and strategic bends. These curves were designed to prevent the sound from escaping sideways into the open air, effectively creating an invisible acoustic tunnel that channels the sound waves upward along the most efficient route. This represents an empirical understanding of wave physics that was centuries ahead of formal scientific theory, a knowledge gained not from textbooks but from meticulous experimentation and an artisan's intuitive grasp of how sound interacts with stone. Beyond the mystery of sound, Golconda's physical defenses are a masterpiece of geometric military architecture, most famously exemplified by its gates. The main entrances are not simple openings in a wall. They are intricate death traps designed according to a multi-layered, diamond-shaped plan. As an invading force approached, they would first be funneled through a narrow outer gate. Once inside, they would find themselves in a small, enclosed courtyard, but the inner gate would not be directly in front of them. Instead, it would be positioned at a sharp 90-degree angle, often around a corner. This forced any attacker to turn their entire body, and more importantly, their large, heavy siege weapons like battering rams completely sideways, making them utterly ineffective and exposing the army's flank. The walls of this killing zone were lined with rows of sharp, pointed stone projections called merlons. These weren't just decorative, they were designed to shatter the trunks of elephants, which were often used as living battering rams. From above, hidden machicolations holes in the ceiling allowed defenders to pour boiling oil or water down on the trapped soldiers below. This diamond-shaped defensive design, with its offset gates and lethal courtyards, was repeated at every major entrance. It was a system of sequential bottlenecks, each one more deadly than the last, designed to break the momentum of a charging army and reduce its numerical advantage. The construction of these features required an advanced understanding of geometry and spatial dynamics. The architects had to calculate sight lines for archers, angles of deflection for incoming projectiles, and the precise placement of every stone spur to maximize its destructive potential against war elephants. The entire fortress is a lesson in applied mathematics, a brutal and efficient equation where every angle and corridor was engineered to multiply the strength of the defenders and systematically dismantle the force of any attacker. Golconda stands not just as a silent fort of stone, but as a brilliant, whispering mind, a place where the air itself was weaponized and every corner held a calculated, deadly surprise. Yet each of these gates shows a different face of the same defensive philosophy, a masterclass in psychological and physical warfare designed to break an enemy's will before a single arrow was loosed. The Sohail Gate, the main entrance, presents a facade of grand, almost welcoming architecture, but this is a deadly ruse. Once inside, an attacking force would find themselves trapped in a series of tightly enclosed courtyards, their movements constricted and their formations broken, while defenders could rain down fire from hidden positions on the walls above. The sheer number of gates meant that a besieging army could never concentrate its forces. They would be forced to spread themselves thin around the immense perimeter, vulnerable to counterattacks from the highly mobile garrison within. This was not a fortress meant to endure a passive siege. It was an active, aggressive instrument of control, its every gate a carefully crafted instrument of domination. The true enigma of Rotas, however, lies not in its grand design, but in the Herculean task of its execution. The fortress walls stretch for over 4 kilometers, encompassing an area of nearly 70 hectares, and are constructed from massive blocks of ashlar stone. The logistical challenge of sourcing, shaping, and moving this unimaginable quantity of material across such rugged terrain is a puzzle that still captivates engineers. The stone was quarried from the nearby hills, but transporting multi-ton blocks down steep slopes and across the rocky bed of the Gahan River would have been a monumental undertaking. There were no roads suitable for heavy carts, and the use of elephants, while possible for some tasks, would have been impractical for the largest stones. The most plausible theory involves a system of massive, lubricated wooden sledges, dragged by thousands of conscripted laborers using ropes and brute force. They likely created temporary roads of laid logs, rolling the sledges along them in a painstakingly slow procession, a testament to the immense human cost of Sher Shah Suri's ambition. The precision with which these stones were then fitted together, often without any mortar, speaks to a workforce that included highly skilled masons who could shape rock with incredible accuracy, creating walls that have withstood centuries of earthquakes and weathering with stoic resilience. Perhaps the most profound mystery is the speed with which this colossal project was completed. Historical accounts suggest the entire fortress was built in the astonishingly short span of 8 years. To erect over 4 kilometers of monumental walls and a dozen complex gateways in such a short time, in a hostile environment and while simultaneously quelling the very rebellions the fort was meant to suppress, suggests an organizational feat of almost supernatural efficiency. It speaks to a terrifyingly effective central authority that could commandeer and coordinate a vast workforce, manage complex supply chains for food, water, and tools, and oversee every aspect of the construction with military precision. The Fortress of Rotas stands not just as a marvel of military architecture, but as a chillingly efficient monument to the power of absolute will, a permanent scar on the landscape that symbolizes the crushing weight of empire and the anonymous toil of thousands whose lost methods built the impossible. Rising from the dusty plains of Rajasthan like a vision of epic grandeur, the fortress of Chittorgarh is not merely a castle. It is an entire city of stone, a sprawling testament to Rajput valor and resilience that covers an astonishing 700 acres of mountainous terrain. It is the largest fort in India and one of the most formidable ever conceived, a place where history echoes not just from its palaces and temples, but from the very rock upon which it stands. The scale is almost incomprehensible. To walk its perimeter is to undertake a pilgrimage of over 8 miles. But the true genius of Chittorgarh, the mystery that has allowed it to endure through 8 centuries and 3 devastating sieges, lies not in its towering walls or its 7 monumental gateways, but in its lifeblood, water. In a region plagued by arid heat and recurrent drought, the builders of Chittorgarh performed a miracle of hydrological engineering, creating a water storage system of such vast capacity and sophistication that it could sustain a population of over 50,000 people for years on end without a single drop of rain. The heart of this system is a breathtaking network of massive, interconnected water bodies. Scattered across the undulating plateau are over 85 distinct bodies of water, but the crown jewels are the colossal reservoirs known as talabs. The most famous of these, the Gomak Kund, is a masterpiece of fusion between nature and architecture. Its name, meaning cow's mouth, comes from a natural spring that gushes from a rock shaped like a cow's head, but this natural source was merely the starting point. Ancient engineers enclosed the spring within an immense, geometrically perfect tank, channeling the precious flow into a vast, stone-embanked reservoir. This was just one source in a wider, brilliantly conceived strategy. The entire fort was designed as a colossal rainwater harvesting machine. The natural slope of the land was meticulously studied and augmented with a web of subterranean channels and surface aqueducts that captured every single drop of rainfall that landed within the 700-acre complex. This runoff was funneled into these giant talabs, which were strategically positioned at different elevations to allow for gravity-fed distribution throughout the citadel. The sheer volume is what defies belief. The combined capacity of these reservoirs is estimated at a staggering 4 billion liters of water. To visualize that, imagine over 1,600 Olympic-sized swimming pools all perched on top of a mountain. This wasn't just about digging big holes, it was about ensuring the water remained potable for years. The builders demonstrated a profound understanding of water management that feels almost modern. They constructed bayores or step wells, which are not simple wells but intricate, cascading subterranean structures with steps leading down to the water level. The design of these step wells is pure genius. The deep, shaded structure minimized water loss from evaporation under the relentless Rajasthani sun, while the constant, gentle air circulation through the stepped corridors helped keep the water cool and fresh. Many were also lined with natural purifying agents like certain types of clay and sand, and some historians speculate that specific aquatic plants were cultivated within them to help filter the water and inhibit algal growth, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem for maintaining water quality over long periods of siege. This elaborate aquatic network required a corresponding mastery of stonework, and here, the fort's defenses reveal their own layer of mystery. The approach to Chittagong is guarded by a series of 7 massive gates, each one a formidable fortress in its own right. The most imposing of these is the Rampal Gate, a soaring structure of towering arches and robust bastions. The construction technique for these gates is a subject of deep fascination. The builders used a method of interlocking stone masonry, where massive blocks of locally quarried sandstone were cut with such precision that they fit together like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The real enigma lies in the binding material. While some mortar was likely used, the primary strength of the structure comes from the perfect fit and the complex system of load distribution. The arches themselves are masterpieces of counter-thrust and weight calculation, built without the use of temporary wooden centering supports, which would have been impractical for spans of such size and at such heights. The prevailing theory is that they built the arches from both sides simultaneously, using the mountain itself as a support until the final keystone was dropped into place at the apex, locking the entire structure into a state of perfect tension and compression. This technique required an extraordinary level of geometric foresight and confidence, as a single miscalculation in the cutting of a stone would have meant the collapse of the entire arch. Beyond the gates, the skyline of Chittagong is dominated by its majestic towers, the most iconic being the 9-story Vijay Stambha, or Tower of Victory. Erected in the 15th century to commemorate a major military triumph, the tower stands 122 feet tall and is covered in exquisitely detailed sculptures of gods, goddesses, and scenes from Hindu mythology. The construction of this ornate colossus presents a unique puzzle. How did workers haul these intricately carved, multi-ton stone blocks to such a height and assemble them with such artistic precision? There is no evidence of large external ramps, which would have been astronomically massive for a structure this tall and narrow. The most plausible explanation lies within the tower itself. Its interior contains a narrow, spiraling staircase that winds its way to the top. It is believed that the builders used a combination of a small internal hoist, possibly powered by a manual winch, and a system of internal derricks or cantilevered wooden beams that extended through the already constructed openings of each level. This allowed them to lift stones from one finished floor to the next in a sequential process, essentially building the tower from the inside out. The sculpting adds another layer of mystery. Were the thousands of intricate panels carved on the ground before being lifted into position, or were master stone carvers suspended on scaffolding to complete their work after the blocks were set? The risk of damaging a pre-carved block during lifting was immense, suggesting that perhaps the most delicate work was done in situ, a terrifying prospect for artisans working hundreds of feet in the air with simple chisels and hammers. The ultimate testament to Chittagong's design is not that it was never conquered, but that it survived its conquests. It endured 3 great Johars, the ultimate act of Rajput defiance where, facing certain defeat, the women committed self-immolation and the men rode out for a final, suicidal battle. Each time the fort was sacked, its palaces burned and its population devastated. Yet each time life returned, the water system, though perhaps damaged, was never destroyed. The gates, though scarred, never fully breached. The towers, though symbolizing defeat for some, remained standing as symbols of indomitable spirit. The fortress's resilience is a direct result of its builders' foresight. They didn't just build for a single generation or a single siege, they built for eternity. They created a self-contained world, a mountain city that could generate and conserve its own sustenance, defend itself with brute geometric force, and inspire its inhabitants with breathtaking beauty even in the face of annihilation. Chittorgarh is more than a collection of stones. It is a lesson in holistic engineering, where every element, from the grandest reservoir to the smallest sculpted detail, was part of an interconnected system designed for one purpose: to endure. Towering above a strategic pass in the hills of western Syria, the Crac des Chevaliers represents the absolute pinnacle of Crusader military engineering, a fortress so perfectly conceived that it was considered virtually unconquerable in its day. For over a century, this colossal structure, known as the Castle of the Knights, stood as the indomitable heart of the Crusader states, a symbol of Frankish power and a masterpiece of defensive design that continues to awe military historians. Unlike the organic, layered growth of Aleppo's citadel, the Crac was a single, coherent vision of military perfection, built and refined by the Knights Hospitaller into what many consider the finest and most beautiful castle in the world. Its power lies not in one single trick, but in the brilliant integration of multiple, overlapping defensive systems, each one reinforcing the other to create a killing machine of stone that defied the military technology of its age. The most revolutionary feature of the Crac and the core of its defensive genius is its concentric design. This is not simply a castle with a double wall. It is a fortress within a fortress, a diabolical puzzle of 2 completely independent defensive perimeters. An attacking army that miraculously breached the massive outer wall would not find themselves in a courtyard, but trapped in a narrow, horseshoe-shaped killing zone known as the enceinte. They would be surrounded on all sides by the even higher and thicker inner wall, completely exposed to a deadly crossfire from every direction. Archers and crossbowmen on the inner wall's towers could shoot down into this pit, while defenders on the outer wall could turn around and fire down upon them from behind. There was no cover, no escape, and no way forward. This design psychologically shattered an attacker's momentum, transforming a moment of victory into a prelude to annihilation. The construction of these 2 mighty circuits of wall, perfectly coordinated to create this lethal trap, suggests a level of strategic foresight and geometric planning that seems to belong to a later era. The builders weren't just stacking stones, they were conducting a symphony of defensive warfare, with every wall, tower, and arrow slit playing its part in a devastating harmony. This concentric principle was amplified by the fortress's formidable artillery towers. These were not simple square turrets. They were massive, projecting structures that allowed defenders to cover every inch of the outer walls with flanking fire, eliminating any blind spots where attackers could work in relative safety. The towers themselves were vaulted stone giants, designed to withstand the pounding of siege engines and provide stable platforms for the defenders' own heavy weapons. The construction of these towers reveals another layer of sophistication. The masonry is a mix of techniques, with the lower levels featuring large, rusticated blocks for immense strength, while the upper levels use smaller, finely cut ashlar. This indicates a highly efficient use of resources and labor, applying the most skilled and time-consuming work only where it was most needed for precision, such as the carving of arched embrasures and complex vaulting. The sheer volume of stone moved and shaped for these interlocking defenses is staggering. a project that would have required the constant labor of thousands of skilled and unskilled workers for decades, all managed with the logistical precision of a modern military operation. Yet for all its martial brutality, the crack was also a self-contained world, capable of sustaining a garrison of over 2,000 knights and soldiers through a siege lasting years. The key to this incredible endurance lies hidden within its inner ward, a vast 120-meter-long reservoir carved directly into the living rock of the mountain peak. This cistern was the fortress's beating heart, filled by a brilliant and fail-safe rainwater catchment system. The entire structure was designed as a giant funnel. The roofs of the storerooms, the Great Hall, and the chapels were all sloped and channeled, directing every drop of precious rainfall through a hidden network of clay pipes and stone gutters into this central underground store. The logistical foresight to integrate this water harvesting system into the very fabric of the castle's initial design is what separates the crack from its contemporaries. It wasn't an afterthought, it was a fundamental pillar of the defensive strategy, ensuring that the fortress could never be forced to surrender simply due to thirst. This hydrological genius extended to every corner of the stronghold. The inner ward also features a stunning Gothic cloister, a serene courtyard surrounded by elegant, pointed arches that feels more like a monastery than a military outpost. Beneath this beautiful facade, however, lies a network of cool, dark storerooms with vaulted ceilings, capable of holding enough grain, salted meat, and olive oil to feed the large garrison for 5 years. The presence of such extensive storage, combined with the reliable water supply, meant that the defenders could simply shut the gates and wait, watching with impunity as a besieging army outside withered under the sun, consuming its supplies and succumbing to disease. The crack was not just a shield, it was a sustainable ecosystem of defense, a monument to the understanding that true military power is as much about logistics and endurance as it is about walls and weapons. This holistic approach to fortress design, blending brute strength with graceful living and meticulous planning, creates a hauntingly beautiful paradox, a machine built for war that resonates with the peaceful, orderly spirit of the monastic knights who called it home. Leaving the concentric perfection of the Crac des Chevaliers behind, we now journey to the very edge of the known world, to a place where ancient architecture meets the raw, terrifying power of the Atlantic Ocean. On the wind-scoured western-most fringe of Ireland's Aran Islands, the fortress of Dun Éann stands as one of the most dramatic and enigmatic prehistoric structures on Earth. This is not a castle designed for comfortable lords or intricate court politics. It is a primal statement of defiance, a stone sickle thrust against the sky on the very brink of a 100-meter cliff. Built during the Bronze Age over 3,000 years ago, its semi-circular form clings to the precipice, its back to the abyss, as if its builders sought to confront whatever approached from the sea with nowhere left to retreat. The location itself is a mystery, chosen not for strategic control of trade routes, but for its sheer, awe-inspiring isolation, a decision that makes its construction all the more unfathomable. The first and most immediate puzzle is the staggering quantity of stone. The fortress is composed of multiple concentric walls, the outermost of which encloses an area of nearly 14 acres. These are not simple piles of rubble. They are drystone walls built with immense, often multi-ton limestone blocks, fitted together with a precision that has allowed them to withstand 3 millennia of Atlantic gales. The local limestone, known as karst, is a brutal material to work with, jagged, heavy, and unforgiving. But the true logistical nightmare lies in the location. The Aran Islands are essentially a barren slab of rock, and every single stone used in the construction of Dun Éann, from the smallest filler to the largest foundational block, had to be manually quarried, lifted, and transported to this remote cliff top. There were no trees on the island suitable for making rollers or sledges, no large draft animals to assist with the hauling, and no easy paths to the summit. The most plausible theory is one of almost unimaginable communal effort. It's believed that teams of workers would have pried the stones from the surrounding limestone pavement using wooden levers and stone hammers, then carried them up the steep incline to the site in a continuous human chain, perhaps using simple slings or nets. This would have been a generational project, a testament to a society that could mobilize and sustain a workforce for a project with no immediate, obvious economic benefit, driven instead by a powerful cultural or spiritual imperative that we can only guess at today. Yet, the most bizarre and genius defensive feature lies not in the walls themselves, but in the deadly carpet laid out before them. Approaching the fortress from the landward side, an attacker would be confronted by a nightmarish zone known as a chevaux de frise, a term borrowed from later military history meaning Frisian horses. This is not a wall or a ditch, but a vast, sprawling field of thousands of jagged, upright limestone spikes, planted securely into the bedrock and sharpened to points. Imagine trying to cross a football field-sized area covered in deadly, knee-high stone caltrops, each one waiting to trip you, impale you, or break your ankle. This defensive system is diabolical in its effectiveness. It would have completely broken the charge of any attacking force, shattering formations and slowing warriors to a painful, vulnerable crawl, making them easy targets for slingers and archers on the walls above. The field is so effective that it remains virtually impassable even today for a visitor taking careful, conscious steps. For a warrior under a hail of projectiles, it would have been a death trap. The construction of this stone forest is a puzzle that has perplexed archaeologists for decades. How did Bronze Age people, with only simple tools of stone, wood, and perhaps early bronze, manage to quarry, shape, and implant these thousands of spikes so securely that many remain firmly in place after 3,000 years? The process would have been back-breakingly slow and precise. Each spike, some weighing over 100 pounds, had to be individually selected for its shape, then hammered and chiseled to a point using stone mauls. Then the real challenge began, implanting it. Workers would have had to fracture the existing limestone bedrock to create a small hole or fissure, then painstakingly hammer the pointed end of the spike into this opening, likely using a large stone as a hammer and perhaps using water to soften the ground, wedging it in with smaller stones until it was locked in an upright position. The collective labor required to create this vast field, spike by agonizing spike, is almost beyond calculation. It represents a terrifying commitment to defense, a community so determined to protect this sacred or strategic space that they were willing to dedicate years, perhaps generations, to creating this permanent zone of peril. Derinkuyu Hossa does not just challenge our ideas of prehistoric capability. It presents a haunting image of a society that looked out at a vast, empty ocean and built a fortress against the horizon itself, its methods and motivations forever anchored in the silent, stoic stone. High in the forbidding Alborz Mountains of northern Iran, a solitary rock pillar thrusts towards the sky, a natural fortress so remote and inaccessible it seems less a creation of geology and more a setting from a myth. This is Alamat, the legendary eagle's nest, the impregnable heart of the Nizari Ismaili state, and the headquarters of the order known to history as the Assassins. For nearly 2 centuries, this fortress was the stuff of nightmares for kings and sultans, a place from which, it was said, a single word from its master could send devotees on missions across the continent to strike down the most powerful figures of the age. But beyond the legends of political intrigue and shadowy deeds lies a far more tangible mystery. How did human hands manage to not only scale this vertiginous peak, but build a self-sufficient community upon its summit, creating a stronghold so secure it defied every conventional army that laid siege to it? The first and most daunting challenge was the ascent itself. The Rock of Alamat is a sheer-sided pinnacle, accessible only by a single, treacherous footpath that wound its way up the southern face. This was not a path for armies or pack animals. It was a narrow, vertigo-inducing track, often little more than a handhold-assisted scramble. The notion of transporting the vast quantities of material needed for construction, stone, timber, mortar, and food, up this natural staircase seems almost impossible. The builders likely employed a system of ropes and pulleys anchored to the rock face itself, creating a primitive but effective aerial lift. Teams of laborers at the base would have loaded materials into baskets or nets, which were then hauled up by teams at the summit using a capstan or a simple rope and lever system. This would have been a painstakingly slow and dangerous process, a testament to an almost fanatical determination to conquer the vertical world. The very act of getting a single beam or block to the top was a victory in itself, and they had to do it thousands upon thousands of times. Once on the summit, the architects faced an even greater puzzle than defense: survival. A fortress is useless if it cannot outlast a siege, and a siege on a mountain top means being cut off from all resources, especially water. Alamat's solution to this problem was one of hydrological genius. The entire summit was engineered as a massive water catchment system. The builders constructed a series of deep, plaster-lined cisterns, carving some directly into the bedrock and building others from stone and a remarkably durable mortar. But these reservoirs didn't rely on unpredictable rainfall alone. They channeled and captured water from a much more reliable source, the mountain itself. During the spring melt, snow and ice from the higher peaks of the Alborz Range would seep through fissures in the rock. The builders of Alamat identified these natural seepages and intercepted the water with a hidden network of clay pipes and subtle channels, funneling every precious drop into their storage tanks. This meant that even during the driest summer months, the fortress could have a supply of fresh, cold water flowing directly from the heart of the mountain, making it virtually immune to thirst. This self-sufficiency extended to food. The summit, though limited in area, was meticulously planned to support a community. Terraced gardens were built into any available space, their soil likely carried up in sacks by the very laborers who built the walls. Here they cultivated vegetables and herbs. Large, cool, and dark storerooms were carved into the rock or built with thick stone walls to preserve vast quantities of grain, dried meat, and other staples hauled up during times of peace. The ability to store enough food for years, combined with the limitless water supply, transformed Alamat from a mere lookout into a sustainable island in the sky. A besieging army camped in the arid valleys below would find itself starving and dehydrating long before the defenders on their well-supplied perch felt even a hint of desperation. The fortress's defenses were a masterpiece of psychological warfare as much as military engineering. The approach was a killer in itself, with the narrow path ensuring any attacking force could only advance single file, completely exposed to arrows, rocks, and boiling liquid dropped from above. The gates were not simple doors but a series of complex switchback passages that could be blocked at multiple points with massive stone slabs. But the true defense was its reputation. The sheer, obvious impossibility of the place, the knowledge that it was stocked for a decade and manned by devotees who feared nothing, not even death, was a more powerful deterrent than any wall. The legend grew that within Alamat was a paradise of gardens and fountains, a heavenly reward shown to the devotees to inspire their ultimate loyalty. While this was likely figurative, it speaks to the aura of impossible perfection that surrounded the fortress. It wasn't just a castle, it was an idea, a statement that a small group of determined individuals, armed with ingenuity and an intimate knowledge of their environment, could defy empires from a place where nature itself had declared building to be impossible. Alamat's true secret wasn't a hidden weapon or a magical trick. It was the utter mastery of a location, a symbiosis between the ruthless logic of its builders and the unforgiving rock they chose to call home. Rising from a sheer sandstone cliff 400 feet above the sprawling blue city of Jodhpur, the fortress of Mycenae is less a structure built upon the landscape and more a terrifying and magnificent extension of the mountain itself. Its colossal walls, some of which are over 120 feet high and 69 feet thick, appear to erupt organically from the rock, their foundations seamlessly blending into the cliff face in a display of architectural symbiosis that is both awe-inspiring and deeply intimidating. This isn't a fortress that occupies a hill. It is the hill transformed by the vision of its Rajput builders into an indomitable symbol of power that has dominated the skyline for over 5 centuries. The first and most baffling question it presents is not how it was defended, but how it was even begun. How did workers and artisans manage to carve a civilization from the brink of a vertiginous abyss? The initial construction phase in the 15th century would have been a terrifying ballet of brute force and precarious balance. Before a single stone of the palaces could be laid, the summit of the mountain had to be leveled and prepared. This meant workers dangled from ropes or worked from rickety bamboo scaffolding anchored directly into the rock face, using simple iron chisels and heavy stone hammers to painstakingly chip away at the sandstone, smoothing the peak into a stable plateau. The quarried rock wasn't wasted. It was immediately repurposed, crushed into gravel and dust to be mixed into the lime mortar that would bind the fortress together. This was a philosophy of zero waste, born not of environmental concern but of sheer logistical necessity, as hauling any material up or down the cliff was a Herculean task. For the massive dressed stones that formed the outer walls, the challenge was magnified. These multi-ton blocks of hard, yellow sandstone were quarried from the plains below and then faced the seemingly impossible journey upwards. Without a viable road for carts or elephants, the most plausible theory involves a system of massive, inclined earthen ramps. Laborers would have built these ramps against the cliffside, their surfaces lubricated with water or oil, and used teams of oxen and hundreds of men to drag the stones up on wooden sledges in a slow, grinding procession of pure human effort. Once on the summit, the true genius of Mycenae's construction revealed itself in its perfect marriage with the bedrock. The builders did not simply lay foundations on top of the rock, they integrated them into it. The lowest courses of the palace walls are often continuous with the living stone of the mountain, with the foundational blocks being so meticulously shaped and fitted that the transition from natural cliff to man-made wall is virtually invisible. This technique provided unparalleled stability, anchoring the soaring palaces directly to the planet's crust and making the entire structure incredibly resistant to the seismic forces that occasionally ripple through the region. This method required an army of highly skilled stonemasons who could read the rock, understanding its grain and weaknesses, and shape it with an artisan's precision using the most rudimentary of tools. The result is a fortress that feels eternal, as if it grew naturally from the earth rather than being imposed upon it. The palaces within, like the famed Moti Mahal and Phul Mahal, are masterpieces of stone latticework and intricate carving that defy their martial context. Creating such delicate artistry at such a dizzying height adds another layer of mystery. The famed jarakas, the ornate enclosed balconies that project from the palace walls, are carved from single blocks of sandstone. Artisans would have had to sculpt these intricate screens with their complex geometric and floral patterns in situ, perched on scaffolding that hung over a 400-foot drop with the desert wind whipping around them. The risk of a single chisel slip destroying weeks of work, or worse, was ever present. This suggests a culture of unimaginably skilled and focused craftsmanship, where the value of artistic expression was worth the immense danger and effort. The famous latticed screens, designed to allow royal women to observe the outer world without being seen, are so finely carved they appear to be delicate woodwork rather than solid stone, a testament to a stone carving tradition that has rarely been matched. Perhaps the most profound testament to Mycenae's builders is its state of preservation. While many contemporary forts have crumbled, Mycenae stands virtually intact, its walls barely weathered by 500 years of sun and wind. This remarkable durability is due in large part to the specific type of mortar used, a proprietary formula whose exact composition remains a closely guarded secret passed down through generations of local masons. It is known to be a unique blend of lime, crushed sandstone, gravel, and a key organic binder, most likely a gum or resin from local trees or even a specific variety of lentil, which was boiled and mixed in to provide exceptional waterproofing and cohesive strength. This mortar did more than just glue stones together. It created a monolithic bond that moved and flexed as one with the daily expansion and contraction of the stone in the desert heat, preventing the cracks and erosion that plague lesser structures. The fortress of Merangar, therefore, is not a relic frozen in time, but a living monument to an unbroken chain of knowledge, a perfect fusion of human ambition and geological inevitability that continues to watch over Jodhpur with an unwavering, stony gaze. Perched high above the Baroque spires of Salzburg, crowning the Festungsberg mountain with an aura of unshakable authority, the fortress of Hohensalzburg is a breathtaking testament to medieval ambition. It is one of the largest and most completely preserved medieval castles in all of Europe, a sprawling stone city in the sky that has dominated this strategic pass through the Alps for over 900 years. From its beginnings in the 11th century, it was designed to be more than just a military stronghold. It was a statement of absolute princely power, a luxurious palace for the prince-archbishops who ruled the region, and an astonishingly self-sufficient community built with a level of comfort and engineering sophistication that seems to defy its early date. The mystery of Hohensalzburg is not that it was built to be strong, but that it was built to be so remarkably livable at such a dizzying height, a puzzle of logistics and luxury carved into a mountaintop. The initial challenge faced by its 11th century builders was one of sheer volume and verticality. Every stone, every beam, every ounce of material needed to create this vast complex had to be hauled up the steep, forested slopes of the Festungsberg. There were no roads, only treacherous paths. The primary method for this Herculean task was almost certainly a system of massive, zig-zagging wooden ramps. These temporary roads, built from timber sourced from the surrounding forests, would have been anchored against the mountainside, creating a stable, inclined plane. Teams of oxen and hundreds of laborers would then have dragged sledges laden with stone and supplies up these ramps in a continuous, grinding procession. For the largest blocks, a giant treadwheel crane, known as a treadwheel, would have been essential. This was a human-powered marvel of medieval engineering, a large wooden wheel inside which men would walk like human hamsters to power a winding mechanism that could hoist multi-ton stones straight up the cliff face using a complex arrangement of ropes and pulleys. The coordination required to manage this constant flow of traffic up and down the mountain, while simultaneously preparing the summit and beginning construction, was a logistical nightmare executed with breathtaking efficiency. Once the materials were on site, the builders revealed their true genius in the fortress's hidden infrastructure. The most advanced feature for its time was a sophisticated and reliable water supply system. A fortress under siege is useless without fresh water, and Hohensalzburg's engineers solved this problem with incredible foresight. They constructed a series of enormous, vaulted cisterns deep within the bedrock of the mountain itself. But these weren't just passive reservoirs waiting for rain. They were part of an active catchment system. Channels and gutters were integrated into the design of every roof and courtyard within the complex, designed to capture every possible drop of precious rainwater and funnel it through hidden pipes into these central storage tanks. This ensured that even during a prolonged siege, the garrison and the Prince Archbishop's court would have enough water to drink, cook, and most impressively, maintain a level of sanitation that was unheard of in most contemporary castles. This attention to hygiene was a critical, yet often invisible, component of the fortress's strength, preventing the outbreaks of disease that doomed so many other besieged strongholds. This hydrological ingenuity reached its pinnacle with the construction of an early pressurized water system that served the Prince Archbishop's lavish staterooms. Deep within the fortress, a cleverly designed raised tank, filled by hand from the main cisterns, provided a gravity-fed water source. From this tank, water was channeled through hollowed-out logs or early metal pipes to a single, magnificent point, the state-of-the-art latrine in the royal apartments. This was no simple garderobe chute cut into the outer wall. This was an elaborate, multi-seat privy that featured a constant flow of running water to carry waste away down a deep central shaft, a feature of sanitary engineering that would not become common in European cities for centuries. The presence of such a system high on a mountain in the medieval period is a stunning anomaly, reflecting a commitment to comfort and public health that seems wildly advanced for its time and place. Beyond the plumbing, the fortress's defensive design is a masterclass in layered protection. The approach is a deliberately confusing maze of fortified gateways, twisting ramps, and towering bastions, each one forcing an attacker into a vulnerable, channeled position exposed to fire from above. The heart of this defense is the iconic Recturm, a massive circular artillery tower that was added later but built upon these early principles of defense in depth. The construction of these soaring walls and towers on such limited and uneven terrain required a profound understanding of weight distribution and foundation work. The builders employed a technique of stepped foundations where the footings of the walls were carved deep into the mountain's bedrock and then built up in tiers to create a level base for the rising stonework. This method effectively made the mountain and the fortress a single, unified structure, allowing it to settle and shift as one entity over the centuries without collapsing. The stonework itself, particularly in the oldest sections, is a robust mix of rough, mortared rubble for the core of the walls, faced with more carefully cut ashlar blocks for strength and appearance. This combination provided immense durability while optimizing the use of materials and labor. Yet, for all its martial might, Hohensalzburg's most surprising aspect is the sheer opulence contained within its protective shell. The Prince Archbishops, who are both religious leaders and powerful secular princes, demanded residences befitting their status. The staterooms, particularly the Golden Hall, are breathtaking achievements of medieval interior design. The ceiling of this magnificent room is not made of simple timber, but is an intricate vault of exquisite ribs and sculpted bosses, all crafted from a light, durable type of salt clay that was then painted and gilded to create a dazzling effect. The walls are adorned with elaborate frescoes and intricate wood paneling. Creating such refined artistry in this remote, windswept location required importing specialized craftsmen from across Europe and hauling their materials, gold leaf, rare pigments, fine tools, up the same brutal path as the stone and timber. This transformation of a rugged fortress into a luxurious palace reveals the dual nature of medieval power. The hard, intimidating fist of military strength wrapped in the velvet glove of refined culture and overwhelming wealth, a statement carved in stone and gold that no one, from the lowliest peasant to the most visiting emperor, could possibly ignore. But none of these marvels of defensive architecture could truly prepare the world for the sheer, breathtaking speed of the Ottoman war machine, a velocity made manifest in stone on the banks of one of the most strategic waterways on earth. In the spring of 1452, the young Sultan Mehmed Roman II, known to history as Mehmed the Conqueror, set his sights on the ultimate prize, the legendary city of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. But to take it, he first had to control the Bosphorus Strait, the narrow, rushing artery that connected the Black Sea to the Mediterranean and the city's lifeline. On the European shore, directly across from an older Ottoman fortress on the Asian side, he chose a site where the strait was at its narrowest. His command was as ambitious as it was terrifying: build a fortress vast enough to dominate the waterway and do it in a single season. The result was Rumeli Hisari, the fortress on the land of the Romans, a colossal complex of walls and towers that was raised from the ground to full battle readiness in an almost unbelievable 4 months, a feat of organized logistics and raw human effort that remains staggering to this day. The scale of the project was immense. The fortress was designed with 3 massive main towers, one named for each of Mame's chief viziers, connected by a curtain wall studded with 13 smaller watchtowers, all enclosing a significant area of rugged terrain. The primary challenge wasn't just the size, but the topography. The land sloped sharply down to the water, requiring immense foundational work to create a level base for the soaring structures. To achieve the impossible deadline, the Sultan mobilized a workforce of unprecedented size and coordination. Historical accounts suggest over 3,000 masons and artisans were conscripted from across the empire, supported by a legion of over 10,000 unskilled laborers. This was not a chaotic mob, it was a military-style operation divided into specialized teams. One group was dedicated solely to quarrying the necessary stone from nearby sites, another to cutting and shaping it, another to transportation, and another to the actual construction. This division of labor, a concept we associate with modern industry, was implemented with ruthless efficiency 500 years ago. The logistics of moving the stone were a nightmare solved with ingenious simplicity. The primary quarry was located on the opposite side of a small valley from the construction site. Instead of hauling the heavy blocks all the way down and back up, the Ottoman engineers built a massive, temporary wooden ramp, a bridge-like structure that spanned the valley directly from the quarry face to the rising fortress walls. This allowed teams of oxen and laborers to drag the stones along a relatively flat, direct path, saving an incalculable amount of time and effort. For the heaviest materials destined for the water's edge, they likely used the strait itself. Barges would have been employed to ferry stone from quarries further up or down the coast, landing them directly at the site where the seawalls were being built. This multimodal transport system by land via ramps and by sea via barges ensured a constant, uninterrupted flow of materials to every part of the construction site, preventing any team from being left idle. The construction methodology itself reveals a fascinating blend of practicality and symbolism. The 3 great towers were not built with uniform, precise stonework. Instead, their exteriors exhibit a style known as devshirm, which means gathered or collected. The builders incorporated spolia reused architectural fragments from nearby ruined Byzantine structures, including columns, capitals, and marble pieces, laying them horizontally within the rough stone and mortar matrix. While this may have saved some time, its primary purpose was likely psychological and symbolic. It was a powerful visual declaration that the old Byzantine order was being broken down and literally embedded into the foundations of the new Ottoman power. Yet for all this symbolic reuse, the core of the towers was built for pure strength. The walls are immensely thick, and the towers were designed as independent strongholds, each with its own water cistern and supplies, meaning that even if one section of the fortress was breached, the others could hold out. The true secret to the fortress's rapid completion, however, was the revolutionary use of mortar. Ottoman engineers had perfected a unique, fast-setting lime mortar that was incredibly strong and durable. The exact formula is lost, but it is believed to have included additives like egg whites, ash, and even animal hair to accelerate the curing process and increase its tensile strength. This rapid-setting mortar allowed masons to work at an incredible pace, laying courses of stone one after another without long waits for the binding material to set and bear weight. This speed did not come at the cost of quality. The mortar was so effective that it has helped the fortress withstand major earthquakes for over 5 centuries. The entire project was overseen by the Sultan himself, who reportedly camped on site in a dedicated pavilion to personally supervise the work and drive his viziers, who were each made personally responsible for the completion of their namesake tower in a fierce competition of speed and efficiency. Rumeli Hisari was more than a fortress. It was a statement of intent, a thunderous declaration from a new era of power that could command not just armies, but the very earth and stone to obey its will at an unimaginable pace. Just 1 year after its gates were shut, the cannons placed on its towers had sealed the fate of Constantinople, proving that the greatest fortress is not always the one that takes the longest to build, but the one that is finished precisely when it is needed most. Rising from a sheer sandstone plateau in the heart of India, the fortress of Gwalior is a sprawling city of stone that has dominated the skyline for over a millennium. Covering an immense area of 3 square kilometers, its elongated outline stretches for nearly 2 miles along the top of a narrow, isolated hill, its vertical cliffs forming natural walls that made it one of the most formidable strongholds in all of Asia. Its reputation as the pearl among fortresses was well earned, not just for its military might, but for the breathtaking artistry and sophisticated engineering contained within its massive defenses. To understand Gwalior is to unravel a multi-layered mystery, one that encompasses profound spiritual devotion, hydrological genius, and a mastery of stone that continues to baffle all who study it. The approach to the fort is a statement in itself. The main road wins its way up the hillside to a single, heavily fortified gate, but the true awe begins long before you reach it. The southern cliff face, visible for miles around, is not a blank wall of rock. It is a colossal canvas. Carved directly into the living sandstone are dozens of immense, serene figures of Jain Tirthankaras, some standing over 50 feet tall. These are not simple etchings. They are deeply sculpted, detailed statues, meticulously rendered with calm expressions and intricate adornments. Their scale so vast that they could only be fully appreciated from the valley floor far below. The creation of these figures is a puzzle of both devotion and technique. Sculptors would have worked from precarious scaffolding suspended down the cliff face, using simple iron chisels and hammers to painstakingly remove the rock layer by layer. The logistics of supporting a team of artists on a near-vertical surface, of removing tons of rock debris without damaging the emerging figures below, and of achieving such perfect proportions while working from such an extreme perspective, is a testament to a culture that viewed architectural endeavor as both a divine duty and an ultimate expression of power. Once inside the massive gates, the fortress reveals a different kind of wonder, one of delicate beauty rather than overwhelming scale. Tucked away within the vast complex lie the Sasbahu temples, 2 side-by-side shrines dedicated to Lord Vishnu. Their name, translating to mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, is a charming folk label for structures that are actually masterpieces of early medieval architecture. The larger of the 2 temples is an explosion of intricate carving, its entire exterior surface covered in a dazzling array of geometric patterns, floral motifs, and detailed friezes depicting scenes from Hindu mythology. The true marvel, however, is that these temples are not built from assembled blocks. They are monolithic, carved top-down from the very bedrock of the hill itself. This means the architects didn't construct, they subtracted. They began with a solid mass of sandstone and with unimaginable patience and precision, carved away everything that was not the temple. This reverse engineering approach required a complete and perfect 3-dimensional vision of the final structure before a single chip of stone was struck. A mistake in planning could not be undone. The interior pillars, the vaulted ceiling, the sanctum sanctorum, all were revealed from the solid rock, requiring a mastery of stone and geometry that feels almost supernatural. The level of detail achieved, from the lace-like perforations on stone windows to the finely etched patterns on pillars, all executed from the inside out in a dark, confined space, remains one of India's greatest and least understood architectural achievements. This mastery of the hill's substance was applied to a challenge far more practical than artistry: survival. A fortress of such size required a vast and reliable water supply to withstand the lengthy sieges it was designed to endure. The solution was a water harvesting system of brilliant simplicity and staggering scale. The entire plateau was engineered to capture every single drop of rain that fell upon it. The builders constructed a network of channels and diverters that funneled runoff from the vast open areas and from the roofs of palaces into a series of massive rock-cut reservoirs. The most famous of these, the Johar Kund, is a colossal tank with a capacity of over 20 million liters. But these were not simple pools, they were technological marvels. Many were lined with a natural, water-resistant clay and featured cleverly designed step well systems that allowed access to the water as it receded during dry months, while simultaneously minimizing evaporation under the fierce Indian sun. The precision of the engineering is seen in the gentle, calculated gradients of the collection channels, which ensured a steady flow without erosion, and in the strategic placement of filtration chambers filled with sand and charcoal to purify the water before it entered the main storage tanks. This system could sustain a population of thousands for over 3 years without a single monsoon, turning this high, arid rock into a self-sufficient island and making its capture by thirst an absolute impossibility. All of this, the art, the temples, the water, was protected by a circuit of defensive walls that represent the apex of Indian military architecture. The walls are not merely high, they are intelligently brutal. They follow the exact contours of the hill's cliff edges, presenting a seamless, continuous barrier of solid sandstone that averages over 35 feet in height. Their thickness is even more impressive, varying from 15 to over 30 feet in key strategic sections. These were not simple vertical walls. Many sections were built with a pronounced batter, meaning they slope inward as they rise. This design made them incredibly resistant to both direct assault and the undermining tactics of siege warfare, as any tunnel dug at the base would meet an ever-thickening mass of stone. The construction method itself is a mystery of coordination, quarrying, shaping, and transporting the millions of sandstone blocks required, then hoisting them into position on the narrow hilltop without the use of cranes, would have been a logistical nightmare spanning generations. The stones were fitted together with such precision that the walls present a nearly smooth surface, offering no handholds for climbers and few seams vulnerable to battering rams. The fortress of Gwalior stands as a complete historical document, a seamless fusion of the spiritual, the practical, and the martial, its secrets locked within the very rock from which it was so painstakingly revealed. Rising from the very heart of Scotland's capital, perched atop a vast, ancient volcanic plug, Edinburgh Castle is a fortress defined by its geology. This isn't a castle built upon a hill, it is the hill itself, a bastion of black basalt that erupts 430 feet above the surrounding city, its sheer cliffs forming natural defenses that have challenged builders and attackers for millennia. The story of this fortress is not just one of kings and sieges, but of a centuries-long struggle to conquer one of the most intimidating building sites in all of Europe, a battle of human ingenuity against the immutable will of stone and gravity. The primary challenge for every builder from the early Dark Ages through the medieval period was the sheer, jagged irregularity of the rock itself. The summit of Castle Rock is not a smooth, level plateau. It is a chaotic landscape of craggy outcrops, deep fissures, and dramatic, unpredictable slopes. Constructing any building here required first engaging in a monumental act of topographic surgery. Before a single foundation stone could be laid, armies of laborers had to painstakingly level the construction sites using the most rudimentary tools, iron picks, stone hammers, and wedges. They would heat the rock with fires before dousing it with water, causing the basalt to fracture and split. The resulting rubble wasn't wasted, it was crushed and used as aggregate for the mortar or as infill to create artificial platforms and terraces. This process of carving the living rock to create a stable base is evident throughout the castle, where the lower courses of walls often merge seamlessly with the carefully leveled bedrock beneath, anchoring the entire structure directly to the planet's core. Building on this scale required an intimate, generationally acquired knowledge of the rock's properties, its grain, its weaknesses, its sheer unyielding strength. Nowhere is the triumph over this challenging landscape more dramatically displayed than in the colossal Half-Moon Battery, the iconic artillery platform that dominates the castle's eastern facade. Its construction in the late 16th century, following the devastating Lang Siege, was one of the most ambitious military engineering projects in Scottish history. The battery is not a simple wall. It is a massive curved earthwork faced with stone and packed with a rubble core, designed to support the immense weight and recoil of the heaviest cannon of the age. But its true genius lies in its foundation. The medieval builders did not simply erect it on the edge of the cliff. They first had to extend the very summit of the rock itself. Using a technique called underpinning, they constructed a series of massive stone vaults and arches that reached out over the precipice, creating an artificial extension of the natural rock. These vaults, which still form the supporting skeleton of the battery today, distributed the phenomenal weight of the earth and cannons above evenly across the strongest parts of the cliff face. The stonework itself is a masterpiece of precision. The outer face is built from large, carefully dressed ashlar blocks, fitted together with tight joints and a strong lime mortar. Behind this elegant skin, however, lies a different world, a turbulent core of rubble, smaller stones, and compacted earth. This combination created a structure that was both rigid enough to serve as a stable gun platform and flexible enough to absorb the impact of cannonballs and the vibrations of its own guns firing without shattering. The logistical feat of building the Half-Moon Battery is almost beyond comprehension. Every single stone, every bucket of mortar, every ounce of material had to be hauled up the steep, winding approach to the castle summit known as the Lang Stairs. There were no cranes or mechanical lifts. The primary tools were brute human strength, wooden sledges, ropes, and a system of winches and derricks. For the largest blocks weighing several tons, teams of dozens of men would have inched them upwards using wooden rollers and levers, a process of terrifying slowness and danger. The mortar, a critical component for longevity, was a proprietary blend of lime, sand, and water mixed on site in vast troughs. Its exact consistency and composition, perfected through trial and error, have proven to be remarkably durable, resisting centuries of Scotland's infamous driving wind and rain where modern cement often fails. The battery's curved design was not merely aesthetic, it was a calculated military innovation. The semi-circular shape allowed for a wide field of fire, enabling defenders to cover the entire eastern approach to the castle with interlocking arcs of cannon fire, making a direct assault on that face a suicidal endeavor. It stands today not as a relic but as a working piece of history, its stonework as solid as the day it was finished, a permanent testament to the anonymous masons who literally reshaped the top of a mountain to defend their nation. Beyond the Grand Battery, the castle is a labyrinth of smaller marvels that reveal the daily realities of building on this rocky perch. The siege of a fortress is not broken by walls alone, but by thirst, and Edinburgh's defenders solved this problem with typical Scottish pragmatism. Carved deep into the bedrock beneath the Half-Moon Battery is a massive cistern, designed to capture and store every precious drop of rainwater that fell on the castle roofs and courtyards. This wasn't a simple hole in the ground. It was a carefully engineered reservoir lined with a specially formulated, water-resistant plaster to prevent leakage. The system of gutters and channels that fed it, some carved directly into the rock, others made from hollowed-out logs, required a precise understanding of gradients and flow to function effectively. This hidden hydrological network allowed the garrison to withstand prolonged sieges, turning the castle into a self-sufficient island in the sky. The final, and perhaps most poignant, testament to the builder's skill is not a wall or a reservoir but a building, the tiny Romanesque St. Margaret's Chapel, nestled near the highest point of the rock, it is the oldest surviving building in all of Edinburgh. Its continued existence through countless wars, bombardments, and reconstructions is a direct result of its perfect, simple construction. The chapel's small, rectangular form and thick, rubble-built walls, with their narrow, rounded windows, create a structure of incredible stability and low wind resistance. It clings to the rock with a humility and strength that the grander, later palaces sometimes lack, demonstrating that on this windswept crag, the most successful designs were those that worked in harmony with the elements, not against them. Edinburgh Castle, therefore, is more than a collection of historic buildings. It is a living lesson in adaptive architecture, a 1,000-year-old diary of construction written in stone, mortar, and stubborn human will upon a foundation of fire-forged rock. Tucked away in the Kangra Valley of Himachal Pradesh, far from the well-trodden paths of India's more famous monuments, lies an archaeological anomaly that seems to defy both its remote location and the era of its creation. The Mycenae rock-cut temple complex, often called the Himalayan Pyramid or Ellora of the North, is not built upon the land but excavated from it. This is a monolithic masterpiece, a series of 15 towering, ornate shrines painstakingly carved from the living sandstone of a single hillock, creating a fortress of faith that has guarded its secrets for over a millennium. Unlike the assembled stone of most fortresses, Mycenae presents a unique architectural puzzle. How did its creators achieve such breathtaking symmetry and intricate detail, not by adding stone, but by subtracting it? And how does this hollowed-out mountain remain standing after centuries of seismic activity in one of the world's most tectonically unstable regions? The first and most profound mystery begins with the initial vision. The master architect did not have the luxury of sketching on parchment and making adjustments as the work progressed. The entire complex, the central Shikara spire, the surrounding subsidiary shrines, the intricate Mandapa halls, and the sacred Garbhagriha sanctuaries had to be perfectly visualized in 3 dimensions within the solid rock before a single strike of the chisel. One mistake in calculation, one misjudgment of the thickness of a wall or the angle of a ceiling, and the entire project could be ruined beyond repair. This suggests the builders possessed an almost supernatural understanding of spatial geometry and volume. They likely began by creating a detailed, full-scale model of the entire temple in a soft material like clay or plaster on the rock face itself, using ropes and calibrated strings to mark out the precise dimensions and proportions of every niche, pillar, and idol. This model would have served as their only blueprint, a guide to be followed with unwavering precision as they began the terrifying process of removal, carving their way inward from the top down to prevent rock fall from damaging the finished work below. The excavation itself was a feat of patient, brutal labor. Using only basic iron chisels, hammers, and wedges, teams of sculptors would have worked in coordinated shifts. The process was one of gradual revelation, not construction. They wouldn't have started with the fine details. Instead, they first carved out the rough, massive shapes of the primary structures, creating a gigantic negative space in the mountain. This required removing an astronomical volume of sandstone debris, all of which had to be carefully lowered from the scaffolding and carted away, a logistical nightmare at such a scale. As the larger forms took shape, the artists would then move on to the secondary carving, defining the columns, the vaulted ceilings, and the outer facades. Finally, in the last and most delicate phase, the master craftsman would execute the exquisite figurative sculptures that adorn every surface, the gods, goddesses, celestial nymphs, and mythical creatures that give the temple its divine narrative. This inside-out method of construction, where the most delicate work was done last, in the dark, confined spaces deep within the rock, stands in stark contrast to all other forms of building and represents a unique school of architectural courage. Achieving the stunning symmetry and geometric perfection visible at Mycenae without modern measuring tools is another layer of the enigma. The entire complex is laid out according to strict principles of Vastu Shastra, the ancient Indian science of architecture and design. The builders likely used a system of precise proportional measurement called the tolla, a unit based on the height of the image being carved. They would have employed simple but incredibly effective tools like plumb bobs to ensure vertical alignment, water-filled channels to establish perfect horizontals, and compasses made of string and metal points to inscribe the intricate geometric patterns and perfect circles seen on the ceilings and pillars. The repetition of patterns across the facade suggests the use of reusable templates, perhaps made from wood or metal, that could be traced onto the rock to ensure every lotus petal, every square of a lattice window was identical to the next. This marriage of spiritual doctrine and empirical technique resulted in a harmony of form that feels mathematically divine. Perhaps the most enduring question surrounding Mycenae is its incredible structural integrity. How has this heavily perforated sandstone hill, with its massively excavated chambers and thin, load-bearing walls, survived in a region prone to devastating earthquakes? The answer lies in a genius understanding of the material itself and the principles of monolithic architecture. The builders chose a specific, high-density stratum of sandstone for their work, avoiding softer, more fragile layers. More importantly, by carving the complex from a single, continuous piece of rock, they eliminated the weakest points in any structure, the joints. There is no mortar here that can crack and crumble. The entire temple moves as one unified mass during seismic events, flexing and swaying with the Earth's vibrations rather than shearing apart like a structure made of individual blocks. The designers also incorporated inherent stabilizers into their plan. The thick, robust base of the hill was largely left intact, providing a solid foundation, while the weight of the enormous, uncarved rock mass above the hollowed-out chambers presses down, creating a stabilizing force that counteracts lateral shaking. The layout of the pillars inside is not just for aesthetics. They are strategically placed to distribute the tremendous weight of the mountain above evenly across the open floors, acting as a forest of stone supports that have held firm for over 1,000 years. The fortress of Mycenae stands not as a monument to conquest but to contemplation, a silent, soaring prayer carved in stone, a testament to the anonymous artists who looked upon a solid hill and saw a celestial palace waiting within, and whose lost techniques for revealing it continue to inspire both awe and profound mystery. As we reach the end of our journey, the sheer scale of what we've explored is almost impossible to fully absorb. These 25 ancient fortresses are more than just stone and mortar. They are a collection of profound mysteries that challenge the very timeline of human innovation. From the interlocking, earthquake-defying walls of Sacsayhuamán to the gravity-fed fountains atop Sigiriya, from the whispering acoustic tunnels of Golconda to the impossible speed of Rumeli Hisari's construction, we have witnessed a level of ingenuity that feels both ancient and eerily advanced. The master builders of our past achieved these monumental feats without modern software, without hydraulic cranes, and without the scientific principles we take for granted today. Instead, they relied on a deep, empirical understanding of their environment, generations of accumulated and often lost knowledge, and a raw, determined will to conquer the seemingly impossible. In many cases, their forgotten techniques, from the sticky rice mortar of the Great Wall to the self-healing flexibility of Cyclopean masonry, produced results that modern engineers struggle to replicate even with our advanced technology. Their work has endured for millennia, outlasting countless empires and weathering natural disasters that have reduced more modern constructions to rubble. This exploration leaves us with a humbling and thrilling realization. History is not a simple, linear progression from primitive to advanced. There are peaks and valleys, moments of explosive genius whose secrets were somehow lost, only to be rediscovered centuries later. These fortresses stand as permanent question marks, reminding us that our ancestors possessed a sophistication we are only beginning to appreciate. They were not just builders, they were artists, astronomers, hydraulic engineers, and master stonemasons whose legacy is carved into cliffs, hidden within mountains, and soaring above clouds. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these architectural enigmas captured your imagination the most? Was it the submerged, echoing chambers of Derinkuyu, the monolithic perfection of Masro's rock-cut temples, or the terrifying, elephant-shattering geometry of Rhodes's gates? Share your favorite fortress mystery in the comments below and tell us why it fascinates you. The conversation around these puzzles is one of the best parts of uncovering history's greatest secrets. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Our channel is dedicated to unraveling the world's most captivating historical mysteries, from lost cities and buried artifacts to unexplained technologies and forgotten civilizations. There are countless more wonders to explore, and we can't wait to continue the adventure with you. Thank you for watching, and remember, the past is never as simple